Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Esoterica and our continuing series, Halloween Horror, where we take a look at some of my favorite horror gaming experiences of all time. And I could not make this series if I didn't talk about the original Silent Hill, because this game was innovative and amazing in so many ways. And it's basically the yin to Resident Evil's yang. It's the same concept, but it plays in a completely different manner as far as how the story is concerned, because this is way more cerebral horror. And just to preface it, if you've never played this game before, the town of Silent Hill has something going on in it that isn't quite right. And if you are new to gaming, or maybe you're not as old as I am, you may not have actually experienced the original Silent Hill. So I don't want to tell you too much about it, because foundationally, it launches the story for the entire series. But while it looks and plays a ton like Resident Evil, it feels completely different. But the main hook of the game is you have lost your daughter in a car accident, and you're trying to find her in the town of Silent Hill. But how Konami did this, it feels so much different than the rest of the survival horror experiences we had had before. Because Resident Evil, while it's an amazing game and I love it, that's more of a zombie horror story, and the story really isn't super important to the experience, where the psychological horror of Silent Hill plays deeply into the concept of the entire game. And it is hard to talk about it without spoiling too much, but a lot of what your main character has experienced in life is informing the horror. Silent Hill kind of morphs itself to the realities and to the experiences of the person who is in it. So each game in the series changes slightly, and it elaborates on your own personal story as the player character as to why things are going on around it. But the audio design of this game, the character design in this game is absolutely stunning. And I do actually prefer this to the original Resident Evil. If I'm going to play a PlayStation 1 era survival horror game, I'm going to play this one. And right as we come around this corner here, all of a sudden we find these bloody entrails on the ground. We don't know what they're from. It's kind of confusing. And just like Resident Evil, it does have those strange static cameras, but now we get some more dynamic movement in it, and everything's off kilter. Nothing really seems visually like it should, and it's a really nice visual indicator of the experience that your character is going through. If you've ever been in a really stressful situation, sometimes your vision does fail. Sometimes things don't make logical sense around you. And Team Silent and Konami, the developers of this game, did an excellent job of visually showing you things that kind of make it feel uneasy. Because we haven't encountered any enemies yet. There's nothing that's a danger to us. But yet, as this camera starts to go to a Dutch angle and this wheelchair is just rolling into the wall there with the noise of the wheel, you know that something is very fundamentally wrong with this experience and with this town. And then you come upon this hospital bed with a bloody sheet draped over a body, and instantaneously you went from strange and kind of stressful to straight up horror experience, with the audio coming up with that strange grinding in the background. It's building upon different audio layers, different visual layers, different cues to tell you that something is horribly wrong and you're going to need to discover what that is. But in reality, the game starts in the suspense. You start getting hit by this enemy, and you're going to pivot into a different part of the game, because it doesn't give you any weapons. It just leads you through the town to find out what's going on until things change. And now we have a cutscene, and we're inside of a diner, and we wake up. Was it a dream? Was it a nightmare? Was it reality? Was it a false construct in our player character's head? We don't know yet. And that's a lot of the interesting thing that Silent Hill does, is it plays with perception. It plays what's real versus what's in your imagination, and really elaborates. I'll let you listen to a little bit of this cutscene because it is important, and I'll come back and talk more about Silent Hill in just a second.
Run over by a truck, but I'm all right, I guess.
Glad to hear it.
Have you seen a little girl? Just turned 7 last month, short, black hair. My daughter.
Sorry. The only person I've seen in this town is you.
Where is everybody?
I'd tell you if I knew, believe me. Hold it. Where do you think you're going?
My daughter. I've got to find her.
Take this, and hope you don't have to use it.
What's that? Huh. Radio. What's going on with that radio?
Well, the reality is there's a lot going on with that radio, and it's one of my favorite components of the entire game. because as we pick it up and traverse through the town of Silent Hill, every time you hear the static coming on the radio, you know an enemy encounter is coming. And the game does a masterful job of introducing that to you, because you hear the static, you get close to the radio, and then that winged bat creature flies through the window, giving you your first true enemy encounter in the game. And I love what they did with this radio, because you constantly have that horror anxiety. When you hear the radio start to hiss, you know something's around. And as you get closer to it, it'll get louder. As you get further away from the danger, it'll get quieter. And you don't have to fight everything in this game. You can avoid things, and that radio is going to be your number one asset. Because in Resident Evil, you rounded a corner and there was a zombie. Maybe you heard some moaning beforehand, maybe you didn't. You kind of had to just wonder what was around that corner. But in Silent Hill, the designers are already giving you the feeling of horror, knowing an encounter's coming before you've actually ever seen something. And they use a ton of fog, and it isn't just to try to hide the loading of the polygons and pop-in. It also obscures your vision, so you can never really even see what's coming up. You'll hear static now, but we still haven't encountered a monster, but we know it's coming, so maybe you're going to slow down. Maybe you're going to ready your weapon. And as we've gotten louder, we're going to see now we have this zombie or monster dog that we have to fight. And I love how that audio comes up. I think it's one of the most masterful designs about this game. And I will also say that while this game is definitely aged, I'm really glad that they haven't done a complete remake of it, kind of like they did with Resident Evil Remake. While I love that game, we've already shown a video about it, something about the lo-fi aesthetic charm of the original Silent Hill makes it that much better to continue to play. All the grainy textures, all the low resolution, everything about it just kind of informs its own design. I don't love that you run into everything because there's definitely tank controls, but short of that, I prefer playing this game as a PlayStation 1 original, and I'm glad that Konami hasn't gone and redone it. Now granted, the Silent Hill franchise in general is completely dead, and they ruined it. I kind of think you can play Silent Hill 1 through 3, you can add in 4 or The Room after that, but then I'd probably just stop playing the games unless you really are a huge fan, because it's a very quick descent downhill in the quality. But now we know that his daughter left a note saying to go to the Midwich Elementary School, and that's where we're going to be navigating next. And as a fun little random fact, a lot of the school environment was informed by Kindergarten Cop, the movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger, and the ferret. If you've never seen the movie, watch it. It's kind of funny. But read about how the designers use that, because it's really weird to see a kids' movie environment pop up in a game from a Japanese developer that has horror elements and monsters and murder and death. I definitely recommend you just kind of follow up into that. It's a really fun story. But you'll see here now that there's different areas of the town, and some of these, streets, they're blocked off, and the area becomes a maze. Even though it's wide open, it's actually constricting you and kind of funneling you into the next experience, and you have to navigate around that. And I really appreciate and enjoy how the designers kind of forced you down a path that's linear, even though it seems like an open world where you can go anywhere you want. I think that's a great design choice and really does drive the story home even more. But like I said, if you've never played the original Silent Hill, definitely play it. You can get it on the PlayStation Store, you can download it for the PSP or for the Vita. There's 100 ways to play this game, and if you never have, I 100% recommend you do. But now we're going to find out that there's something in the 11th Street doghouse that we need to find. And I appreciate and enjoy all these different notes that are left behind, things that just are in the environment that further you along down the path. Because this game can sometimes be, I wouldn't say confusing, but esoteric in the way that they introduce new areas and the ways to get to them. And you'll see here as we've gotten to this house, we have a first aid kit, and we kind of have a safe area. So the game's lifted the anxiety and kind of shown you this area can be trusted at least for now. But short of that, that is Silent Hill. This is just the very beginning of the game. I don't want to spoil anything for anyone who hasn't played it, but now we know there's 3 locks, and we need to find 3 keys to be able to get to that school. But if you could do us a huge favor, go down below, hit like and subscribe, and ring the notification bell. It takes a lot of time and energy to make each one of these episodes, and we really appreciate your guys' support. If you have any questions or comments, definitely leave them down below. I love talking about this with you guys. I don't like just making these videos into an echo chamber. But short of that, we'll be back on Friday and Sunday with videos, and we'll have another video on Tuesday on our horror series as well. But that's Silent Hill. If you've never played it before, my question would just be, why? You should go do it. Bye-bye.